Welcome to Wallace on Wire. Today we're talking about Mohamad Hasan's definitive stand on supporting Palestine. So we're heading towards the 47th Association of Southeast Asian Nations Summit, and Malaysia's hosting. This is, well, it's a massive stage, isn't it? Probably the most significant diplomatic gathering here in years.
Absolutely. We're talking heads of state, global leaders, the works, but there's this kind of tension surrounding it this time.
You mean the whole question mark over President Trump attending?
Exactly that. Look, having the current United States president potentially show up, especially someone like Trump, well, it changes the dynamic. There's automatically this expectation, maybe even pressure on the host country.
Pressure to maybe soften certain stances.
Precisely. How do you handle that without compromising your own core values or upsetting regional partners? Everyone's watching how Malaysia navigates this.
Which makes Foreign Minister Mohamad Hasan's statement really quite striking. He came out very clearly, didn't he?
He did. He said Malaysia's support for the Palestinian cause is based on principle, and it will not change. Full stop. Regardless of who shows up at the summit.
That's not subtle diplomacy. That's laying down a marker.
It really is. It feels like a preemptive move, actually, saying, look, whoever comes, understand this part of our foreign policy is fixed. It's asserting independence right before the big event.
Yeah, strategic timing seems key here. It's not just a statement, it's positioning.
Exactly. By saying this weeks out, Mohamad Hasan does a couple of things. First, manages things here at home, showing alignment with, well, pretty strong public feeling on this issue.
Right.
And second, for the international audience, including potentially the U.S. delegation, it sets a clear boundary. It says, welcome, but our fundamental principles, they're not up for discussion. That's strategic autonomy in action.
Defining the terms before the talks even start, that makes a lot of sense. It sort of flips the pressure point, doesn't it?
It tries to, yeah. Turns a potential vulnerability into a statement of conviction.
Okay, so let's unpack this unwavering support. When politicians use strong language like that, we need to understand the actual policy behind it. What are the specifics Malaysia is committed to?
Right. It's not just vague solidarity.
Yeah.
The policy is quite detailed. There are four key pillars, really.
Okay.
First, obviously, the fundamental support for establishing a sovereign Palestinian state. That's the baseline. Second, and this is critical, that state must be based on the 1967 borders.
Ah, the 67 borders. That specific point is often where international consensus frays. Why is that line so important for Malaysia's stance?
Well, from an international law perspective, those borders are generally seen as the recognized line before the major conflict shifted things. So for Malaysia, sticking to that is about upholding territorial integrity and legality.
It's about the principle of not accepting borders changed by force.
Exactly. Moving away from that benchmark would undermine that whole rules-based order argument. So it's a legal and principled stand, not just political preference.
Okay, that makes sense. What are the other pillars?
The third one is also vital. The capital of this future state must be East Jerusalem. That's a position shared across, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. And it reinforces Malaysia's role within that group and the Global South.
Right.
And finally, Malaysia consistently supports the right of return for displaced Palestinians, the right to go back to their homes. It's quite a comprehensive package.
It really is. That level of detail shows this isn't just rhetoric, it's deeply embedded. And you can see how this connects strongly within Malaysia itself, right? Politically, and just in terms of public feeling, this is one issue with pretty broad consensus.
Absolutely. That domestic unity is crucial. It gives the government, gives Mohamad Hasan the political space, and frankly, the leverage to hold this line firmly, even when you're talking about potential friction with a superpower like the U.S.
There's almost no political cost domestically for being firm on this. Maybe the opposite.
Precisely. The strength of the stance internationally is directly linked to how solid the support is at home. When the public mandate is that clear, taking a principled stand becomes, well, almost politically necessary, even if there are potential diplomatic or economic considerations.
Okay, let's bring it back to the summit itself, the 47th Association of Southeast Asian Nations Summit. We've talked about the statement managing external pressure, potentially from the U.S. What about the internal dynamics within ASEAN?
Good point. That's the other crucial audience for Mohamad Hasan's message. He made a point of saying that ASEAN centrality remains intact and undamaged regardless of who attends.
ASEAN centrality, that term comes up a lot. Why is it so important, especially for Malaysia as the host?
Well, ASEAN centrality basically means a bloc itself drives the regional agenda. It's about ensuring Southeast Asia isn't just a playing field for, U.S.-China competition or other big power rivalries.
So ASEAN stays in the driver's seat for regional issues.
Exactly. And if the host nation, Malaysia in this case, looks like it's bending its own core policies because of pressure from one external power, it weakens that whole idea. It damages the perception of ASEAN's unity and independence.
So Mohamad Hasan is also reassuring the other ASEAN members, saying, don't worry, we'll hold the line for the integrity of the bloc.
That's a big part of it, yes. He's signaling that Malaysia will protect the platform itself, ensuring it remains a neutral and credible space for dialogue, led by ASEAN principles.
This sounds like a very tricky balancing act, standing firm on your principles while also being the impartial host, welcoming everyone.
It is a diplomatic tightrope walk, for sure. And remember, Malaysia has invited all the heads of state and government. There's a massive logistical and security undertaking involved.
Right, which brings us to Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim's statement from earlier that week.
Yes, that context is important too. On Wednesday, the PM guaranteed full security for all world leaders coming. That's the practical assurance needed.
So it's a dual message. Our principles are firm, and we are fully prepared and committed to hosting you safely and professionally.
Precisely. You need both. We stand by our values, but we also fulfill our responsibilities as host without bias. It ensures the summit can actually function as intended.
Okay, so synthesizing this, Malaysia is projecting principled strength on Palestine while simultaneously guaranteeing a smooth, secure summit for everyone, including potentially controversial guests. It feels like a calculated move.
Very calculated, I'd say.
But surely there must be some assessment of risk, especially economic risk, with major partners like the U.S. potentially being displeased. Is that risk just deemed acceptable, or is the policy simply non-negotiable regardless of cost?
I think it's more the former the risk is calculated. There's likely a recognition that in the longer term, maintaining this principled stance, having that moral authority, and keeping the strong backing of the domestic population and allies in the global south, well, that offers its own kind of strategic advantage.
Interesting. More leverage than perhaps short-term economic gains might offer.
Possibly. By standing firm, Malaysia positions itself as a leader on certain principles, not just a follower or a client state. That kind of moral clarity can build stronger, more resilient diplomatic capital in multilateral settings, which can act as a buffer against pressure from any single nation.
That's a powerful idea. That sticking to principle is the pragmatic long-term strategy sometimes. So, thinking about this whole picture, the firm statement, the hosting duties, the regional context,
Yeah.
what does this tell us about Malaysia's broader diplomatic approach? How do you, listening to this, see this balance reflecting our strategy?
Well, I think it showcases a strategy of perhaps strategic hedging. Malaysia is essentially saying, we value dialogue, we value multilateralism, we'll host you all properly, but you need to know where our lines are drawn on fundamental issues.
It signals maturity, maybe, knowing what's negotiable and what isn't.
Exactly. It demonstrates a foreign policy that distinguishes between tactical flexibility and core unchanging values. And ironically, by showing it won't be easily swayed, it might actually reinforce ASEAN's stability as a platform where real dialogue can happen, precisely because the host isn't seen as beholden to external pressures.
So the key takeaway seems to be Malaysia demonstrating that its core principles, especially on justice and sovereignty like the Palestine issue, operate independently of who might be putting on diplomatic pressure.
Yes, that seemed to be the core message being sent.
And maybe the long-term value of taking such a clear, principled stand, particularly in this complex region with all the superpower dynamics, maybe that value is about defining Malaysia's own independent voice and identity on the world stage for the future. Something to think about. Remember to like and subscribe for more videos like this.